Right now on Morning News Now, a high-stakes hearing in Washington. This morning, former President Donald Trump heading to a federal appeals court over his claims of immunity in his election interference case. We have team coverage. Also this morning, winter's wrath, millions of people under weather alerts as a severe storm threatens several states with heavy snow, damaging wind, even tornadoes. We'll have more on the conditions and where the system is headed next. Plus, disaster averted, a potentially catastrophic discovery on another Boeing 737 MAX 9 just days after this terrifying mid-air scare.
If we have a bigger system-wide or fleet issue, we will issue an urgent safety recommendation to push for change.
The latest on the investigation and what will happen next. And stop scrolling. The new study that shows a digital detox could do wonders for your mental health. I suppose that's no surprise.
It's not a surprise. One more thing to add to your list of things to give up in January.
Drink more water, don't drink alcohol,
Exactly.
and less social media.
Exactly. But it does make a big difference. It really does. If you take a break, you'll see it. Good morning. Good to have you with us. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. Thanks for joining us this Tuesday. We're going to get started this morning in Washington, where a federal appeals court is set to hear arguments today in the election interference case involving former President Trump.
The three-judge panel will hear arguments over Mr. Trump's claim that he is immune from prosecution for his role leading up to the January 6th attack on the Capitol because he was president at the time. Trump is expected to be in attendance at the federal courthouse just blocks from the Capitol. Last August, a federal grand jury indicted Trump on 4 charges, including conspiracy to defraud the U.S. and conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding. He pleaded not guilty, and the judge who's presiding over the case wants to move forward with a trial beginning in March. For more on what we can expect today, we are joined by NBC News Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Delanian and NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos. Good morning to both of you. Ken, let's begin with you. So last month, the judge denied Trump's motion to dismiss his indictment on presidential immunity. Special counsel Jack Smith and asked the Supreme Court to step in before the appeals court does. That request was denied. So that brings us to today. What can we expect in that courtroom?
Good morning, Joe and Savannah. Well, we can expect lengthy and detailed arguments. This is an appellate court, after all. They're grappling with weighty constitutional issues. Now, most legal experts believe Donald Trump's claim here is a long shot, the idea that a former president can't be charged criminally for any conduct. Because, first of all, in order to reach that decision, the court would have to decide that, in fact, presidents are immune from any criminal prosecution. And remember, Gerald Ford pardoned Richard Nixon under the assumption that he could be prosecuted after he left office. But then beyond that, the courts would have to find that what Donald Trump was doing to overturn the election were, in fact, presidential acts. And a court has already ruled in the civil context that that was not the case, that what Donald Trump was doing was acting as a politician trying to win an election. He was not acting as the president. So, again, a long shot, but what this has the effect of doing is delaying this case from going to trial. Presumably after this court rules, it will go up to the Supreme Court. It's not clear how long that will take, and it really puts this March 4th trial date for this case in a bit of jeopardy, guys.
Danny, let's bring you in here. Danny, who, by the way, is joining us not just as our legal analyst, but as a proud Michigan grad.
As you will subtly see on his top.
Yeah.
Yes, 3 hours of sleep, folks.
Yeah, I
want to have a talk with you bookers. How dare you? This morning of all mornings?
Oh, my God. Well, we need you. It's a big day. Let's talk about Trump's argument here. So he's continuously made the argument that former presidents have absolute immunity from criminal prosecutions for any official acts, while he was actually in that office of the president. His legal team cites a 1982 Supreme Court case, a ruling about presidential immunity in a civil case. Walk us through his case here, how strong you think it is.
It's not strong in that it is a real long shot. Here's why. President Trump needs to argue not that he has absolute immunity for anything and everything he does just by virtue of being in the White House. Instead, their argument is that he does have absolute immunity. But, and these are the magic words I'm going to be looking for today, for conduct that falls within the outer perimeter of his official acts. Now, that's really magical language there, because it's not saying that it has to be squarely within what a president does. In other words, the language outer perimeter implies it can be a stretch. It can be a long shot, as long as it's somehow related to his presidential duties. And that is the main thrust of their argument. The problem is, in their brief, as I see it, they devoted exactly 1 page to explaining that what he was doing, what is alleged in the indictment and what Trump says he was doing, fell within his official duties. I think that's going to be the hardest part for Trump and his team, to say that, hey, when I'm calling up the Georgia Secretary of State and demanding 11,000 votes for me, I am the president of the United States investigating the integrity of the election. That's where I think the argument weakens considerably. And that's one of the main reasons Trump has a long shot chance here.
So, Ken, we know the appeals court is hearing this case today on an expedited schedule. I mean, just how expedited? What happens next?
It's not exactly clear, Joe, but we can assume that this appeals court will turn something around rather quickly. And then the question becomes how long before the Supreme Court takes it up, if the Supreme Court decides to take it up, and then how long before they schedule arguments, and then they make a decision, and all of that weighs on the question of when this case can go to trial. And after all, of all the criminal cases against former President Trump, this is the one most people believe is most likely to get to trial the quickest, potentially before a lot of votes are cast in the 2024 election. But the longer this drags on, the less likely that is to happen, guys.
So, Danny, not only is the Supreme Court expected to be asked to weigh in for here, no matter who wins this, Trump is also planning to ask the Supreme Court to hear his claim that presidential immunity should also apply to any future potential civil suits as it relates to the January 6th attack. Tell us more about that and what you think the chances are there.
He's not likely to win, but his chances are much, much stronger in arguing civil immunity. And that's not me saying that. That is literally Jack Smith and the government prosecution team. In their brief, they essentially concede, look, civil immunity, maybe. Criminal immunity, definitely not. And there really is precedent for that. I mean, what we know about presidential immunity at this point, we know it exists, but we don't fully know the contours of presidential immunity. And that's because it's hard to forecast everything a president might do and everything that the government may seek to hold him responsible for. We do know there are things that a president would be absolutely civilly immune for, and I would argue even criminally immune. For example, every president that has ever sent the military to a hotspot in which a casualty occurred, when where someone died as a result, no county prosecutor would charge the president with murder, even though Vincent Bugliosi, a famous prosecutor, wrote an entire book, The Case Against George W. Bush for Murder, based on the Iraq War. So even criminal immunity must exist to some degree for what presidents do. What Jack Smith is arguing really here is that what this president did does not fall within either criminal or civil immunity. That's the main thrust of both the government's argument and the plaintiff's argument.
All right. Ken Delaney and Danny Wolverine Ceballos, thank you both for joining us this morning, kicking us off this hour. We appreciate it.
Congratulations, Danny. We're very happy for you. Well, while Trump is dealing with these legal issues, preparations for the Iowa caucuses are in full swing.
The countdown is on. We are now 6 days from the formal kickoff to the 2024 presidential campaign, and the candidates are ramping up their campaigns in this final stretch. Former President Trump remains the clear frontrunner heading into the caucuses, according to polls, but his rivals are battling it out for what looks like a race for second place. Former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley is making a major push, hoping to come out ahead of Florida Governor Ron DeSantis.
NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hilliard joins us from Des Moines, Iowa, with the very latest. Hey, Vaughn, good to see you. So Trump, of course, leaving the campaign trail to appear in court, as we're expecting to see him today, as well as another time this week. Unlike his opponents, Trump doesn't have this full schedule in front of him on the ground in Iowa. Now, we haven't seen any of these legal issues cut into support for him. In fact, maybe the opposite. Are these court appearances as good as any campaign stop for him, given that he's not actually going to be on the ground there in Iowa meeting voters?
Absolutely. That's the view from Donald Trump's perspective here. These are voluntary appearances. Let's be very clear. Not only the D.C. appearance here today, but also his New York appearance for the closing arguments of the civil fraud trial against him. These are voluntary decisions. So he is making the decision to go into those courtrooms instead of appearing on the campaign trail. And outside of a Fox News town hall on Wednesday night here, he has no campaign rallies until this weekend, right before this upcoming Monday's caucus here. And so for Donald Trump, he has watched ever since last March, that first indictment against him, his polling numbers rise and his lead and margin of lead over these other candidates expand because supporters have, by and large, a great share of the Republican electorate have felt emboldened in their support. I have had numerous conversations just this weekend. I was talking to one woman who told me that once those indictments started coming down, yes, she likes likes of Ron DeSantis, but she felt it was her responsibility to stand by Donald Trump and defend him from these charges that she believes are without merit, and that Donald Trump is somebody that she believes should get back into the White House and put an end to what she believes to be political prosecutions.
So Trump has gone through this whole campaign so far without a single debate. He won't be at the CNN debate tomorrow night in Iowa. Instead, he's going to take part in a Fox News town hall that's in Iowa. But the CNN debate tomorrow could be a pivotal moment for Haley and DeSantis. So what will we be watching out for?
Right. Those two have been duking it out for what would be second place here at this point if the polls hold. You know, Donald Trump has been in the state of Iowa just 5 days over the last month. Well, Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis have been here for about half of the month. And for both of these candidates here, you should see them going toe-to-toe on that stage. Vivek Ramaswamy, Asa Hutchinson, Chris Christie, they won't be on that stage. And this is the chance for them to make the case to the Republicans that they are the Trump alternative. When you look at polling from state to state, Donald Trump is dominant. But when you start to look ahead to New Hampshire, the second nominating contest that comes on January 23rd, Nikki Haley is starting to see some healthy support. And if Ron DeSantis, though, comes in second here in the state of Iowa, there's little reason for him to get out of this race. So this is an opportunity for Nikki Haley to beat Ron DeSantis in the state of Iowa and make the case that the anti-Trump support, if you will, should coalesce around her in order to beat Donald Trump ahead of the convention.
Vaughn Hilliard, thank you as always for your reporting.
On the Democratic side, polls show that some black voters are turning away from President Biden. So on Monday, he made a direct appeal to them at the site of a racially motivated church shooting. NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez reports from South Carolina.
At Charleston's Mother Emanuel AME Church, President Biden honored 9 black worshipers massacred in 2015 by a white supremacist.
This is a poison throughout our history. It's ripped this nation apart. This has no place in America.
The president forcefully trying to link racial violence to the nation's current divisions.
That's all right.
But his speech briefly interrupted by protesters calling for a ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war. Another sign of deep divisions among some Democrats. The president's visit comes as his support among black voters is slipping. In 2020, he carried 92% of that group, but a recent NBC News poll shows just 61% would now choose him over a Republican.
Do you think that the Biden administration is taking the black vote for granted?
Yes, his staff is.
Fletcher Smith worked with the Biden campaign in 2020. Now he says he's very concerned about black voters staying home this November.
That administration looks like they don't want the black vote. I mean, you got to speak to the black people.
Maurice Washington is a conservative who thinks the president focusing on threats to democracy won't work.
It has nothing to do with bringing the country together.
We spoke with a group of voters who want the president to do more on student debt relief and police reform.
I just feel like it's been a lot of broken promises.
I think the main issue for me right now is feeling like I am a priority for the people that are in charge.
It's clear, based on what the people are asking for, that he's not here to serve us.
The Biden campaign insists that the president has taken action on those issues. The question now, will voters give him credit for it? Back to you.
All right, Gabe, thank you.
Now let's get to the latest round of powerful winter storms hitting across the country. Severe weather is moving through the south, like here in Louisiana, where several areas saw torrential rain and flooding. And the Midwest is being slammed with blizzard conditions. Omaha, Nebraska is just one of the cities that saw several inches of snow and heavy wind. NBC's Maggie Vespa is in hard-hit Des Moines, Iowa with more. Hey, Maggie, good morning.
Hey, good morning from a very snowy, as you can see, Des Moines, Iowa. More than 4 inches falling overnight, close to 10 inches, potentially more expected in certain parts of the state by the time this thing wraps up. And as you can see, this is the kind of snow that it's thick, it's big, huge flakes. It has no problem sticking, meaning this is the kind of snow that has officials and local forecasters worried about things like power outages, road conditions, and several school districts, I should note, have already canceled classes for the day. More broadly, close to 150,000 people across the Midwest and South lost power overnight. Even more broadly than that, 54 million Americans this morning are under winter storm alerts from Texas up into Michigan and parts of New England. And then we're also worried about the wind. 180 million Americans across the country dealing with wind alerts this morning. In some areas yesterday, we saw gusts topping 70 miles per hour. Nebraska was a perfect example. We saw crash after crash after crash yesterday on the highways there, with authorities say at least one being fatal. Back here in Iowa, of course, this is also messing with politics. We have less than a week until the Iowa caucuses, and yesterday, presidential candidate Nikki Haley canceled a campaign event due to the snow. And then over the next week or so, we're going to see temperatures plummet. So by the time it gets to the caucuses early next week, we could be in sub-zero territory. And then, of course, guys, just to kind of add to all of this, one more layer. Up in the Northeast, we're seeing really heavy amounts of rain, which when you add that, I don't have to tell you, to the massive amount of snow that you got over the weekend, that has officials really concerned about severe, even possible flash flooding. I'll send it back to you.
All right, Maggie, stay warm. Thank you.
All right, for more on what we can expect from this storm, let's get a check on your morning news now weather forecast.
That means Angie Last Minute is here in studio with us with all the details. Hey, Angie, good morning.
Hey, good morning, guys. Maggie highlighted a lot of really important details that we're going to have to deal with over the next 24 to 36 hours. Here's all those alerts. We, yes, have the winter alerts, more than 50 million people included in that. It stretches from the Great Lakes out towards parts of the plains. We've got wind alerts for really almost, nearly 180 million people. And much of the eastern quarter of the country is dealing with those flood alerts that have been up since earlier today. 75 million people included in that. But we right now have those severe storms that have been developing and forming and causing some issues for folks along the Gulf Coast. Right now, we do have a couple of tornado warnings in effect. We've got thunderstorm warnings in effect as this line of some really strong storms works on shore. We already had a confirmed tornado near Santa Rosa Beach, Florida earlier this morning, and we continue to have that threat expand a little farther to the east as the day goes on. Here's the big picture look of the system. It is large, but let's go one by one with those impacts, starting with the severe risk. You can see the enhanced risk, what is in orange right there. Panama City out to Wilmington, down to central Florida. Wind gusts up to 75 miles per hour. We could see some tornadoes, strong tornadoes at that. Where you see these kind of red slanted lines, that's where we have the chance to see those larger tornadoes, EF2s or higher. Places like Charleston, Wilmington, Columbia, Panama City, all included in that, extending into portions of southern Georgia. But again, that widespread area of red is where we could see that potential through the afternoon and into the evening hours today. Winds are going to be pretty disruptive as well, especially when it comes to travel. We're going to have a lot of rain happening along with those strong winds. 50, 60 mile per hour winds are possible. Check out Atlantic City, Virginia Beach, Cape Hatteras. All of those spots could see peak wind gusts over 60 miles per hour. That'll be problematic when it comes to power outages. So heads up for that. And I mentioned the rain will be significant. We have, snow on the ground. Maggie mentioned it. And with rapid snowmelt comes river flooding, guys. So this will be something that we watch through the day today and into tomorrow. Could be a difficult commute for a lot of folks. And that's not even the snow that they're going to deal with the strong winds causing travel disruptions across the Midwest.
We've seen these temperatures up and down, up and down.
Yeah, and a big cool down coming down the line, and another storm system. So 'tis the season.
All right, Angie, thank you. Well, now to major developments in the investigation into the Alaska Airlines plane that suffered a mid-flight scare over the weekend. United Airlines says its technicians have discovered some loose bolts involving the same Boeing 737 MAX 9 door plug that blew out of the Alaska Airlines flight. NBC News senior correspondent Tom Costello has the details.
United Airlines reports it has found loose bolts in some of its 737 MAX 9 door plugs as both United and Alaska Airlines conduct FAA-ordered inspections on all MAX 9s in the U.S. The NTSB recovered the missing 63-pound door plug that blew out of the side of that Alaska Airlines MAX 9 Friday night, landing in a teacher's backyard. The plug will undergo a close inspection at the NTSB lab in Washington as investigators look at how and why the plane suffered a decompression explosion at 16,000 feet.
Alaska, 1282, we just depressurized, we're declaring emergency, we need to descend down to 10,000.
While no one was seated in the nearest seats, those seats were left twisted and bent. The headrests and cushions sucked out of the plane, along with clothing and cell phones. Nicholas Hoke was on board the plane.
I was starting to text my girlfriend, my mom, my other loved ones, and didn't know if I was going to make it on the other side. It was a lot of intense emotions, for sure.
The door plug that failed is held in place by bolts and pins used to seal an extra emergency exit if airlines don't need it. The NTSB says on 3 previous flights, pressurization warning lights lit up in the same plane. Yet Alaska only restricted the plane from flying over water to Hawaii until technicians could evaluate the problem.
It's early, but should Alaska have grounded the plane back then?
Certainly, it's been a warning sign to them, just on safety overall. But I think, in this case, what Alaska will say is that they took measures to ensure safety. We have to see whether those actions were responsive or not enough.
The plane's fuselage is made for Boeing by Wichita-based Spirit Aerosystems. Spirit said our primary focus is the quality and product integrity of the aircraft structures we deliver. Boeing issued inspection guidelines for every airline that flies the MAX 9. As the FAA reiterated, the MAX 9s will remain grounded until airlines complete enhanced inspections, which include both left and right cabin door exit plugs. That takes 4 to 8 hours each. Corrective actions must be completed before any plane returns to service. Meanwhile, Boeing's CEO has called a company-wide Tuesday meeting to focus on safety. This MAX 9 emergency comes after 2 fatal MAX 8 crashes that grounded the plane, loose bolts on the MAX rudder system, production and quality control delays with the MAX 8, the 787, military planes, and Boeing's space program.
Even an incident like this that doesn't involve any injuries or fatalities does serve to undermine, to some degree, the confidence in Boeing's ability to manufacture a safe aircraft.
And there was a problem with one of the black boxes that was recovered. The cockpit voice recorder is on a 2-hour loop before it's erased and recorded over. And that's what happened. So investigators can't listen to crew conversations, computer warnings, the air rushing through the cabin. It's a big reason why investigators want 25-hour recordings, not 2 hours. Back to you.
All right, Tom, thank you very much.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Israel this morning as U.S. officials push Israeli leaders for a post-war plan in Gaza.
Blinken met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to discuss the offensive in Gaza. He is urging Israel to do more to protect civilians and allow aid into the devastated enclave. More than 23,000 people have been killed, according to local health officials, while the majority of Palestinians in Gaza have now been displaced.
NBC News foreign correspondent Josh Letterman joins us now from Tel Aviv. So, Josh, walk us through this morning's round of talks with Israeli leaders. What is Secretary Blinken's message to Netanyahu and to his government?
Well, Joe, Secretary Blinken met with Prime Minister Netanyahu for about an hour before he joined an Israeli cabinet meeting. And ahead of his visit, while he was in Qatar, the secretary was really focused on trying to get those hostage negotiations with Hamas back on track. Those talks stalled, according to U.S. officials who have spoken to NBC, after the assassination of that senior Hamas leader in Beirut. Now that he is in Israel, the secretary is really trying to urge Israel to move away from these large-scale attacks in Gaza that have killed so many Palestinian civilians and move into this new phase of the war, a lower-intensity phase that the U.S. has been calling on for some weeks now. And just yesterday, we heard from the IDF spokesman telling the New York Times that Israel is indeed moving into that new phase of the war. And so that may be an indication, Joe, that Israel is trying to signal that it is listening to those increasingly loud calls from the U.S. to do more to limit civilian casualties.
Josh, as these talks are happening, we know Israel's continuing its assault on southern Gaza, which is where many of those displaced people moved to from the north. There are reports now that Israeli forces destroyed the biggest residential tower in one of these southern towns, Han Yunis. What's the latest there?
Yeah, the southern part of the Gaza Strip, and particularly Khan Yunis, the largest city in southern Gaza, really is the epicenter now of the Israeli military operation there, with Israel saying that in northern Gaza, in Gaza City, which we spent so much time talking about earlier in the war, they have largely completed the dismantling of Hamas's military apparatus and infrastructure there. And so now they are focusing on the south. But the big question is, when will those Gaza civilians from the north who have been pushed into the south be allowed to return to their homes in the north, assuming that they still have homes left to go back to. So far, Israel has not given any indication of when it will allow people to go back to the north, even as the southern area continues to be under continual and heavy bombardment.
And Josh, amid the push by Secretary Blinken to stop the war from spreading, we are seeing renewed fighting between Israel and Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. Also been reports of Israel bombing targets in Syria. What's the latest with all that?
Yeah, so just in the last few hours, Israel has taken responsibility for killing a senior Hezbollah commander attached to their special forces in an operation yesterday. And today, the cross-border fire has continued, with Hezbollah saying that it targeted Israel's northern command headquarters in Tzfat, which is slightly north and east of where I am here in Tel Aviv. The Israelis say that they responded in turn to the areas in Lebanon from which that drone attack was launched. And so really the tensions are continuing to climb, the fears of that broader war, as the Biden administration and Secretary Blinken are trying to get everyone to cool it, trying to use their conversations through back channels with Iran to get Iran to pull back its proxy forces such as Hezbollah. But right now, there are no signs that this is going to really cool down, with Israel saying that the window for diplomacy to pull back Hezbollah from the border and avert a wider war is soon closing, Joe.
All right, Josh, thank you so much.
Thanks, Josh. Well, at least 20 people were hurt after a massive explosion in downtown Fort Worth, Texas, blew out the first 2 floors of an historic high-rise hotel. Take a look here. You can see the destruction left behind from the blast. Investigators say the cause of the explosion at the Sandman Signature Fort Worth Hotel is under investigation, but was likely caused by a natural gas leak. Welcome back. This morning, House Republicans are calling for Hunter Biden to be held in contempt of Congress in a brand new report.
Republicans from the House Judiciary and Oversight Committees released the new report and committee resolutions on Monday. It's part of their ongoing impeachment inquiry into President Biden. They say the president's son, Hunter, had, quote, no valid reason when he defied a subpoena to appear for a closed-door interview on his business dealings. Instead, on that day, Hunter Biden held a press event in front of the Capitol, taking no questions.
For more on this, we are joined by NBC News congressional correspondent Julie Circa. And Julie, always great to see you. Thanks for joining us this morning. So in these reports, the committee's chairman, that's James Comer and Jim Jordan, they outlined their case for holding Hunter Biden in contempt. What did they say?
Yeah, you're exactly right. And that markup to hold him in contempt of Congress is actually going to take place in both committees tomorrow morning. And remember, this requires a full vote before the House, before it could actually move to the justice system, and Hunter Biden can be held legally liable for not appearing before the committee as they deposed him last month. The chairman writing in part saying, quote, Mr. Biden's flagrant defiance of the committee's deposition subpoenas while choosing to appear nearby on Capitol grounds to read a prepared statement on the same matters is contemptuous, and he must be held accountable for his unlawful actions. Now, again, Hunter Biden did offer to testify publicly when he appeared before the Capitol. It was certainly a surprise to everyone, including us, who are covering all of these proceedings, all of these investigations, and his impeachment inquiry into his father. But certainly the committee escalating this by taking this step.
Have we heard from Hunter Biden on these latest developments?
So we heard from Abby Lowell, who was Hunter Biden's lawyer, when the committee was preparing this resolution, preparing this report to hold him in contempt of Congress. And they continue to say that the Republicans are not taking this inquiry seriously, that his client has offered to testify in a public setting. Again, he does not want to testify behind closed doors because his lawyer says that the committee would misconstrue his client, Hunter Biden's words here. So the Hunter Biden's attorneys continuing to hold that notion, but still the committee's moving forward to hold him in contempt of Congress. Again, though, it would require a full House vote. Meanwhile, though, guys, they're still moving forward on some of these other closed-door depositions, including for George Burgess, who is the art dealer of Hunter Biden. The committee had reached out to him earlier in this year, calling on him to make the prices by which the art was bought, who bought it, publicly available. Today, he's supposed to sit behind the committee, behind closed doors, rather, before the committees for that transcribed interview. Their investigation, including their impeachment inquiry, is certainly moving along.
Julie, while we have you, House and Senate lawmakers announced an agreement on Sunday for a new fiscal year 2024 budget. What's been the reaction on Capitol Hill?
Well, this is a really important step because remember, we're facing down the barrel for one of the two shutdown deadlines coming up on January 19th. And this top line spending agreement, you see some of those details on your screen, $1.6 trillion, about 100 or so billion more for defense spending, the non-discretionary spending. Certainly that's something Republicans wanted to see. I got to tell you, though, this looks a lot like the agreement struck between then Speaker Kevin McCarthy, who you remember was ousted in part because of this, and President Biden on the top line number. You have conservatives in the House, some of the hardliners in the House Freedom Caucus, really slamming this agreement, saying they will not vote for it, they will not support it. And certainly that begs a question of whether Johnson's job is going to be on the line, just like his predecessor were, but certainly not a lot of time until the government shuts down. And we'll see if they can actually vote for this agreement to keep the government open.
All right, Julie Sirkin, thanks as always.
Now to international headlines. Around 2,000 migrants in Mexico have resumed their journey north.
And Megan Fitzgerald joins us now from London with that and other world news. Hey, Megan, good morning.
Guys, good morning. That's right. We start in Mexico, where, as you mentioned, thousands of migrants have resumed that journey north to the U.S. border. Now, as we've been reporting, this massive caravan of migrants from Venezuela, Cuba, and Central America started making their way north on Christmas Eve. But about a week later, the Mexican government convinced them to stop marching north, promising to give them unspecified documents. Many of the migrants told the Associated Press that they felt tricked by the Mexican government. In Rome, Pope Francis delivered a foreign policy address where he called for a universal ban on surrogacy. The Pope believes it exploits the mother and the child. This comes as the pontiff was talking about how peace is being increasingly threatened. He discussed the war in Ukraine, the Israel-Hamas war, climate change, and other examples, but then he listed smaller issues that were also a threat to peace and human dignity, which is when he included surrogacy. And South Korea has now banned breeding and slaughtering dogs for consumption. Parliament passed a bill today that ends the tradition of eating dog meat. Though it has been a tradition, it was also controversial. The bill ended up getting bipartisan support as people's opinions around eating dog has changed over the past several decades. The law takes effect in 2027. Those who break the law, it could be punishable by up to 3 years in prison. Guys.
All right, Megan Fitzgerald, thank you so much. We're back with our weekly mental health check-in, and we have some tips on how to put down your phone for the new year.
That's right. Plus, a new report is taking a closer look at why people are afraid to share their secrets, and the reason might surprise you.
Psychotherapist Dr. Robbie Ludwig joins us now to break down these headlines and more. Good to have you with us. So New Year's resolutions are in full swing. Some people might still actually be following them. For some, that includes doing a digital detox. What are some of the benefits of putting your phone down for the new year? How do you go about doing that without feeling overwhelmed, making sure you actually succeed at doing it?
Well, the studies show that it is not good for us when our phone controls our lives. It's not good mentally, it's not good physically. And what people have found is when they did put away their phone, they had more time to enjoy their lives. They spent more time with family, friends, cooking, engaging in activities that were worthwhile. So very much like an addiction, how we do this digital detox is to be very deliberate and to be in touch with the why. Why are we putting away our phones? Because we want to be in the here and now with our friends, enjoy other activities, and also to not feel in control. Many people feel like they're wasting time. It's a time suck. So to put your phone away, to not have notifications, to maybe delete certain apps that are too tempting for you in order to regain time and to regain control.
Really good advice there. It's inspiring me a little bit. Doctor, let's talk about this secrets thing we keep teasing here. A new study looks at why people are afraid to share their secrets with others. What were the results? What does this tell us about maybe like judgment from others if we don't want to reveal something about ourselves?
Yeah, this was such an interesting study. It found that when the reason why people don't share secrets is because, first of all, they probably judge themselves, and then they assume other people will judge them harshly. And so they tend to keep to themselves. But when they push through the fear and actually shared something they felt maybe insecure about or was a secret, people actually received them much, much better than they imagined. They were perceived as being authentic. There was something likable about revealing an imperfection. And for the person who was actually sharing this secret, it felt cathartic. So the study was basically saying if people knew that others would not judge them harshly, maybe more people would be more revealing about their imperfections and things that they felt perhaps insecure about.
All right, finally, we know FOMO, fear of missing out, can be a real thing. Experts say, though, it might be a good time to start feeling the joy of missing out. I guess we would call that JOMO. How do we do that? How do we make that shift?
Well, I love that they created a word for it so that people can say, I'm not in a FOMO mode, I'm in a JOMO mode, which is really taking time to give yourself permission to not say yes to those parties, to give yourself time to disconnect and to be mindful of how you use social media. It can increase this feeling of missing out and keeping up with the Joneses and focusing too much on others. And the reality is we can't attend to everything. So it's really good to give ourselves permission to create boundaries, to create space for ourselves, and to really enjoy what we're doing in the moment and the people who are around us. I think it's a great word. I hope more people use it for 2024.
Yeah, maybe it'll be like the word of the year or something like that.
Yeah.
The JOMO.
I think it's very fitting for January, right? When you're doing dry January and like trying to get back on track to kind of be like, I don't need to say yes to those plans. It's going to help me generally.
It really fits in with sort of the first topic we talked about, which is sort of the digital detox.
Yeah, exactly.
They are related, very much related. It's this ability to enjoy the now and be deliberate about our time.
Definitely. All right, Dr. Robbie Ludwig, as always, thanks for joining us. We appreciate your time. Back now with financial headlines. It looks like tax season is set to kick off soon.
CNBC's Silvana Henao joins us with financial headlines this morning. Hey, Silvana, good morning.
Hey, Savannah. Hey, Joe. Yeah, very soon, and I am definitely not ready. All right, well, the IRS says Americans can start filing their taxes on January 29th. April 15th is the deadline to file this year, although taxpayers in Maine and Massachusetts have until April 17th, and that's because of holidays in those states. Now, the IRS expects to receive nearly 129 million returns by April 15th. Now, this tax season will include some new developments, including the IRS's efforts to launch its own direct filing platform, which would be a free alternative to sites like TurboTax and H&R Block. The IRS system will be available in a dozen states to start. Destructive storms and earthquakes cost the world about $250 billion in damages last year. A new report from reinsurance giant Munich Re says while the economic losses may not seem extraordinary, it marked another year of extremely high damages, even without so-called mega disasters in developed countries. Munich Re says about $66 billion in assets in North America were destroyed by thunderstorms, of which $50 billion was insured. The company warns losses from storms are likely to trend higher in the coming years. And Apple isn't the only tech giant rolling out a new headset this year. Sony teasing a new spatial virtual reality headset at the Consumer Electronics Show that it says will power the industrial metaverse. Sony is teaming up with Siemens on the device, which is expected to hit the market sometime later this year, though it's designed for professional users, not gamers, letting them create, shape, and edit 3D models. For example, design teams at Red Bull Racing will use the headset to visualize the cockpit of a Formula One car, guys. How about that?
Okay, that's pretty cool. But again,
yeah,
what's going to go on with VR this year?
Everyone's just to be wandering around in a headset, running into each other. All right. So, Anna, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
You got it.
Well, this year's Consumer Electronics Show is kicking off today in Las Vegas. CES, as it's known, is one of the largest tech conferences of the year, where the latest gadgets are showcased and consumers get a glimpse into the future.
At this year's event, they're expecting 130,000 attendees with more than 4,000 exhibitors from all over the world.
NBC News correspondent Steve Patterson is there. He joins us from the conference. Hi, Steve. Good morning. I understand you are testing out some of the latest and greatest tech firsthand, including something I think where you said it made you feel like you could do squats for 24 hours, which I just can't believe. I'm going to need you to explain that. What has caught your eye?
Maybe I was exaggerating with 24 hours, but yes, this is my first CES. I'm very excited. I love what I'm seeing. I love tech. One of my favorite categories, of course, as you're referencing, is wearables. And you might hear wearables and think, oh, that's so 2021, especially with what's going on with AI. But no, they're still here in a big way. And one of the things you're referencing is this like suit that you strap on. We saw many versions of this that allows you to do a little more, especially if you're mobility limited. Like the backpack that you see right there, you strap it on, it kind of fuses to your muscles and you're able to lift a little bit more for a lot longer, braces your back so you can do that. There was this glove that I tried on. It has like haptic feedback and LEDs, allows you to like learn piano digitally if you turn it onto your computer. There was a mouth guard that I saw last night. It's technically not a mouth guard, but you put it in your mouth. Your tongue essentially acts as like a trackpad, so you can control applications on your phone with your tongue. It is wild. I love some of this stuff, and of course, all of it now is using AI in some way, guys.
Yeah, first of all, that feels like the ultimate in lazy. Like, I don't want to use my hands anymore. Like, for the mouse, I'm just gonna use my tongue.
Yeah, it's interesting.
You said, I mean, AI, that just, I assume that has to be like the huge theme this year. Talk about that. And are there any other themes that are going to be big this year?
Yeah, so look, I would say AI is so big that it's like no longer the theme, right? Like in years previous, AI was like coming out, so it was this big headline. Now it's literally just in everything, okay? If your toaster can't talk to you, if you can't ask your refrigerator questions, if you can't talk to your car, it's all old tech. So it's literally like sort of permeating everything. Volkswagen just came out with a car that allows you to have chat GPT, so you can talk as you're driving and ask it questions about where you're going and stuff like that. So it's kind of literally in everything, so much so that it's so pervasive that it's not necessarily the headliner. I would say the big headliner is sustainability, clean air, clean water, access to food. All of that is important. Look, millennials are 40 years old now. I think it's important to our generation and generations younger that this planet remains in good shape. And I think companies now are picking up on that. They're thinking it's profitable now, especially as more generations sort of come into having capital. And so, like the other day, right, I saw a flying taxi. In 2016, 2017, that would have been the headline, that there's a flying taxi. Now it seems like there's a flying car model every show. The difference this time is it was completely sustainable. It ran all electric. So if it comes out anytime soon, it'll be amazing because it's using clean energy and clean power. A lot of companies are now really, really focused on that sustainability bit, guys.
That's good to hear. Steve, also, I know that it's making its way into health and nutrition fields, all this new tech. What have you learned there?
Yeah, health and nutrition is huge. And with some of the wearables that I was mentioning as well, some of that stuff is so cool because it works with people who are mobility limited. So functionality for folks who may be disabled and need to use that tech, they are able to because, you know, they have access to some of that. That is huge. There was for just home use, there was this little like multi-tool that showed you its biometrics by scanning your lungs, taking your temperature, using it as a stethoscope. You can send all of that to your telehealth doctor so you can communicate over the internet. There was something that we saw that was just incredible, that it was like a box that created clean air, so much here that is focused on health. And I think it's kind of the new age way to sort of communicate as we get older, guys.
All right, Steve Patterson, fun assignment. Thank you so much.
This morning, we are getting a look at shocking video that shows dozens of thieves ransacking a family's food store in L.A. Days later, the owners are reopening their business, but say they've lost tens of thousands of dollars. NBC News correspondent Stephen Romo has the details.
Chaos at a California convenience store. Surveillance video showing the moment a Kia SUV slammed through the entrance last week, destroying it before dozens of people rushed inside.
The last 3 days have been so hectic. You know, I've been sleeping here just because we don't have a way to really secure the building.
Some with their faces covered, seen jumping on the counters, taking stuff off the shelves, even ripping the cash register out. It caused more than $70,000 worth of of damage to the family-owned Reuben's Bakery and Mexican food store in the city of Compton.
It was horrendous. I felt angry. You know, I was upset.
Law enforcement saying everything from equipment, food, even scratch-off lottery tickets were stolen.
We have meat scales, meat itself, like items from the business, as far as groceries.
This all unfolded at 3 a.m., according to the sheriff's department, as a so-called street takeover was taking place less than a mile away.
I've been caught in one. I've heard them, and it's no good.
That's when crowds illegally take over busy intersections, blocking traffic to show off cars, race, and perform dangerous stunts. All before law enforcement can arrive to shut it down.
They're blocking the traffic, and it's just a bunch of little kids, you know, I guess, unsupervised.
For years, the city of Compton has tried to address these takeovers to avoid deaths, serious injuries, and other crimes like this burglary last week.
We're looking at everything that we can, working with the sheriff department, in order for us to try to make sure that we can curtail this.
Reuben says his family has kept the bakery going for nearly 48 years. This weekend, they were able to reopen. He says thanks to the help from friends, family, and the community.
But I could maybe wish that it didn't happen, but I just wanted to be back to how we were, just a small business, serving the community, and, you know, helping out our neighbors.
Our thanks to Stephen Romo for that report. Police are now asking for help from the public to identify the thieves. They're also trying to address crimes like this by citing people who spectate at these mass takeovers.
Well, there are new football champions this morning. The Michigan Wolverines beat the Washington Huskies 34-13 in a showdown of undefeated powerhouses last night in Houston. Michigan's first national title since 1997 comes after a controversial season that saw their head coach, Jim Harbaugh, suspended for multiple games. The Wolverines still found a way, though, to make history with the win as they become just the 5th team to finish a top division college football season with 15 wins and 0 losses. Congrats to Michigan. Congrats to Danny Ceballos for their win.
Exactly. I feel like this is one of those seasons that might get the documentary treatment.
Yeah,
We'll see.
Absolutely. Coming up, an incredible survival story out of Southern California.
Up next, how rescuers were able to find a woman trapped in her car for several days in frigid temperatures without cell service. This is Morning News Now. We're back with a story near and dear to my Minnesota heart. Prince's classic Purple Rain is being turned into a stage musical. The Oscar-winning movie and its soundtrack album were both huge hits when they came out 40 years ago. Well, this new version features a book by Brandon Jacobs Jenkins, the writer behind the play Appropriate, which is on Broadway right now, and you should check out, by the way. It'll be based on the original screenplay. More details about the project will be announced in the coming months, but you already know you got the music for it, or at least a lot of the songs, so I'm looking forward to that one.
This is just like, has you written all of all the factors
all
here?
All my things.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Joe.
Yep.
Finally this hour, an incredible helicopter rescue in Southern California. A woman survived for days while trapped in her car in freezing temperatures. NBC News correspondent Rahima Ellis has the story.
A miracle rescue.
They have one confirmed patient over the side, conscious. The patient has been over the side since Wednesday.
BDC and ANF personnel on scene making access to the patient will need to extract by copter.
A woman trapped in her car for 5 days in frigid temperatures with no cell phone service.
It's been extremely cold and wet, as we're all aware, with the rain and the colder temperatures in the month of January.
It happened in a remote section of Angeles National Forest near Mount Baldy. The woman told firefighters she swerved to avoid a deer in the road, her Ford Ranger plummeting more than 200 feet. She spent 5 days and 4 terrifying nights trapped in her car. Then a hiker spotted the wreck and flagged down firefighters who were on a separate rescue call in the area.
She's lucky that somebody was going for a hike and found her.
And lucky to have survived and appears to have escaped the ordeal, only slightly injured.
Based on everything, it's going to be, elements, hypothermic possibly, dehydrated, malnourished, and possible leg injury.
Officials offering this incident as a warning about driving during these treacherous winter months.
Driving too fast for current conditions and not being familiar with the roadway is a big factor in a lot of the accidents, but her surviving it, not only just the accident, but also the elements, is a New Year's miracle.
Rahima Ellis, NBC News.
That'll do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
Stay with us. The news continues right now. Good morning. Thanks for joining us. I'm Savannah Sellers.
I'm Joe Pryor. Right now on Morning News Now, immunity on the line in Washington today. Former President Trump heading back to court. His lawyers arguing he shouldn't be charged in that ongoing federal election interference case. What we expect to hear from them, and of course, how it all could affect Mr. Trump's run for the White House. We're also tracking more wicked weather that's barreling across the country this morning. It's a massive storm system that's soaking the deep south and bringing another round of snow to much of the Midwest. And the storm sights millions on the East Coast are still digging out from that weekend wallop. We're tracking it all. We'll tell you what you can expect as you head out the door. Developing this morning, an explosion at a hotel in downtown Fort Worth, Texas. More than 20 people are injured, what authorities are saying could be behind the blast. And later in the hour, prepare to flip out over the growing number of Americans, me included, who are clinging to their older cell phones. Why we're willing to skip the latest and greatest technology to save some money, maybe spend a little less time on those devices.
I see what you did there.
Reacquainted.
Flip.
Some people are doing flip phones. To be clear, I'm not. I just love my iPhone 7 Plus.
It is. You do. I do kind of miss that, like ability to snap it shut.
Yeah. A lot of people like that.
Yeah.
It's a big one. Yeah. So, see, maybe you'll have a flip phone.
Yeah.
We begin this hour with the federal election interference case involving former President Trump and his alleged efforts to try and overturn the 2020 election, culminating with the January 6th attack on the Capitol.
An appeals court is set to hear arguments this morning regarding Trump's claim that he is immune from prosecution because he was president at the time. Trump is expected to attend the hearing today. Now, the case against Trump is being led by special counsel Jack Smith. The former president pleaded not guilty last August after being indicted on federal charges. We have full team coverage this morning, including analysis from NBC News Now legal analyst Angela Senadella. But first, we're going to get started with NBC News justice and intelligence correspondent Ken Delanian outside the court. Hey, Ken, good morning. So the federal judge in this case, Tanya Chutkan, previously denied a motion by the Trump legal team to dismiss the charge against him. Now we're at this appeal. Bring us up to speed on this case and how we got to today's hearing in Washington.
Good morning, Savannah and Joe. Yeah, this case is about presidential immunity and whether a former president can be prosecuted for acts committed in office. And frankly, most legal experts think that Donald Trump's claim here is a long shot. The idea that under no circumstances could anything a president does be subject to criminal penalty. After all, Gerald Ford pardoned Richard Nixon after Watergate under the presumption that he could, in fact, be charged when he left office. But there is no case law on this. This is uncharted territory. And so this case is going to be heard by a 3-judge panel, all female judges, 2 of whom were appointed by President Biden, 1 appointed by President George H.W. Bush, arguing on behalf of Mr. Trump, the former Missouri Solicitor General, arguing on behalf of the special counsel, principally a career Justice Department lawyer that no one's ever heard of. We expect these arguments to go on for some time. It could be 3 hours or more, judging by a similar set of arguments on the gag order in this case. There'll be plenty of debate from both sides, and then at the end of the day, these judges will have to decide which way they're going to go. And then, of course, we expect that this case would be appealed to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, I mean, Ken, the trial in this case is scheduled to begin in early March, pending appeals and other possible delays. So what can we expect to happen after the hearing today? What's the timeline?
Right. Well, so the appeals court has heard this on an expedited basis. So we can expect that they will make a decision and publish a decision rather quickly. And then it would be, if it goes against Mr. Trump, or either way it goes, we can expect that the losing side will appeal to the Supreme Court. Then the question will be, does the Supreme Court agree to take the case? If they don't, that's the end of it. Excuse me. If they do, then it becomes a question of how quickly they take it up. Do they schedule arguments? How quickly can they turn around a decision? And those are crucial questions going to the issue of whether this trial schedule can be maintained, this March 4th trial date, or whether that's going to push. This is the case against Mr. Trump that's the most likely to get to trial before the election, but its schedule is in peril right now because of this appellate delay.
All right, Ken, thank you very much.
Let's bring in NBC News Now legal analyst Angela Senadella. So Trump's lawyers have said his role in questioning the election was within the outer perimeter of his official responsibilities as president. What are his main arguments here? How strong are his arguments?
Well, we expect to see two main arguments. The first is this idea of double jeopardy, that because he was impeached and acquitted by Congress for these very alleged acts, that he can't be tried again in a criminal court of law. But the second bulkier argument is that because this happened during the time where he was President Trump, that he should experience a wide presidential immunity. Now, we know on the other side, though, that, as Ken said, this is a long shot argument because it doesn't necessarily make sense in a democracy for a president to have full immunity from all criminal acts.
Angela, something kind of interesting here is third parties were able to file these friend of the court briefs. And this Democratic group brought up the point, does this particular court even have the jurisdiction to see this appeal? The three judges here are expected to kind of tackle that today, ask some questions about that to these lawyers themselves. What do you make of that argument? Explain what that means. And does it ultimately mean that kind of the question here of immunity or not could be sidestepped?
Yeah, the question there is whether or not it is really the trial court's jurisdiction to decide this. And there's also another friend of the court appeal here, or filing brief, and that was from a former attorney general who claimed that Jack Smith does not have any authority here and has the same equivalency of Taylor Swift in this. So we'll see the court address these, but likely they won't be the major arguments in this case today.
Let's see if Taylor Swift comes up in the hearing today. All right, so Ken mentioned this, that no matter what happens, the losing side's going to appeal this to the Supreme Court. What are the Supreme Court's options here?
So I would have thought before the Supreme Court agreed to hear the 14th Amendment case that they would almost certainly hear this. But even though we on the outside might think that they like to meddle in our political agenda, they like to see themselves as not meddling, period. So the fact that they took that case makes me question whether or not they would even take this on appeal, which means that it is possible whatever decision is brought down today by this appeals court will be final.
Right. Well, we're going to see what happens. All right, Angela, thank you so much. Appreciate your expertise.
Absolutely. Now let's get to the latest round of powerful winter storms. This one walloping the plains. People in that region are seeing blizzard conditions and heavy winds this morning. This as the south is hit with torrential rain, even tornadoes. And then the northeast faces widespread flooding just days after a massive snowstorm there. NBC News correspondent Maggie Vespa joins us now from Des Moines, Iowa. Hey, Maggie, you are not there for the caucus for us. You are there for the weather conditions. What does it look like there this morning? How bad is it?
Yeah, I'm saying hi to all of our political colleagues here, but you're right, here for a very different reason. I mean, you can see for yourself, but just for context, it got this bad overnight, guys. We were here, there was like maybe a half an inch of snow, just kind of a dusting on the ground. People were being careful out on the roads, but this is kind of a transformation here in Des Moines overnight. I'll show you just kind of how thick and heavy this is. Like, this is the kind that sort of packs into a perfect snowball immediately. These are fat flakes that are falling, really wet, heavy snow. And this is the kind of stuff that makes driving dangerous. Several school districts in the area have already canceled classes for the day. We have close to 5 inches that have fallen overnight, up to 10 expected in the Des Moines area basically by this evening, guys. And parts of the state, and this is just Iowa, could see up to a foot of snow by the time this thing is done, which is expected to be late afternoon this evening. So it's falling hard, it's falling fast, and yeah, the impacts are kind of rippling out as we speak, guys.
Yeah, Maggie, speaking of impacts, any power outage issues so far?
Yes, several. Basically, multiple states reporting mass power outages. So we're at close to 250,000, actually. Our team is keeping a close eye on that, mostly in the Midwest and South, because keep in mind, a lot of areas are also seeing those heavy winds. We saw wind gusts yesterday, guys, topping like 70 miles per hour. Nebraska was a mess. We saw a lot of crashes there, at least one of them on the highway, fatal because of the snow, because of the wind. You know, that creates drifting, even after the storm ends. And that's actually expected to be a problem here in Des Moines later today. We have gusts up to 40, 45 miles an hour predicted. So it's kind of just part of that multi-layered, I would say 1-2 punch, but it's like 1, 2, 3, 4 when it comes to this storm. The impacts are definitely layered, and those numbers are climbing as we speak.
Maggie, also, let's talk about the Northeast real quick, where we are. Heavy rains expected from Massachusetts up to Pennsylvania. Also, hurricane force winds here as well expected in New York. How worried are officials, about flooding or any other concerns that could come, especially after we just saw that snowstorm?
Exactly. I mean, you guys saw in the Northeast, it hit right where you are, all that snowfall over the weekend, especially over in Boston, Albany, Hartford, like they got hit really hard. When you add to that now melting snow, all of this rain that's expected to hit the area, officials are very worried about the possibility of severe, even flash flooding. That hurricane-force winds tidbit, that was highlighted by New York's governor yesterday. She's declared a state of emergency. New York City has enacted its flash flood emergency plan, an ominous title. They say they just want to be prepared in case that comes to fruition. New Jersey also declaring a state of emergency. So everybody really bracing for kind of the tailored impacts from this storm that is just hitting so much, basically the entire eastern half of the country as we speak throughout the day and into tonight. Guys.
All right, Maggie Vespa, stay warm, get inside in between us making you talk about this if you can. Thanks so much.
All right, let's get more on that 1, 2, 3, 4 punch, all the punches with a look at your morning news now weather forecast.
That's right, Angie Lastman's back with us with the latest. Hey, Angie.
Yeah, the first punch, guys, good morning to you, is quite a brutal one. We've already seen a very dangerous morning occurring across portions of the Gulf Coast. We've had multiple tornado warnings. We've had confirmed tornadoes just to the west of Panama City, and we've already started to see some of that damage coming out. And we've still got a long way to go with the severe threat through the day today, but notice there's that line of thunderstorms that's marching to the east. We've got tornado watches in effect for a little while longer. We've got a couple of tornado warnings, and we've got thunderstorm warnings as well. So a busy morning for folks there, but the severe threat is going to spread a little farther to the east through the day. I'll show you that here in a moment, but look just what a major storm this is. Expansive for sure, going all the way up into portions of the Midwest, the Great Lakes, where we're dealing with snow there, and we've got the heavy rain to deal with and those strong winds. Let's talk about timing. If you're in Chicago, it's now until 3 a.m. where you're going to deal with the snow. And on top of that, those gusty winds that makes travel really difficult. We're going to see some significant wind throughout the day. Places like Buffalo, 3 p.m. to 5 a.m., strong winds and that heavy rain. And if you look a little farther to the south, it looks like places like Atlanta now through basically 1 p.m. where you'll have that potential for severe threat, as well as the flooding rains causing some problems. Travel this afternoon, especially for that commute in some of these places, is going to be really difficult. So a heads up for folks that are going to be out on those roads. Charlotte, noon to 6 p.m., same kind of threat as Atlanta. We look up to Washington, D.C., not looking at severe threat, but still the potential for a really significant flooding and heavy torrential rain is possible 1 p.m. through the evening hours. And again, the commute will be difficult for folks in New York the second half of the day going into the early morning hours. If you're a traveler for early morning in New York City tomorrow, you'll have to deal with likely the flood risk, but also those strong winds. The winds are going to make it really difficult for travel across really the eastern third of the country as we go into tomorrow. There's the severe risk. Notice places like Panama City, up through Charleston, Wilmington, and down through Central Florida. Those are the spots where we have the greatest chance to see some of these stronger storms developing, strong winds, tornadoes, large tornadoes at that. We've already seen an active morning, and we still got a long way to go through the day today. Notice the places where you see the striped lines. That's where we have the better chance to see some of those stronger tornadoes. Panama City, Charleston, Wilmington, all included in that. Don't let your guard down later today. You're going to want to have a way to get those alerts as they come out through the morning and into the afternoon and evening hours tonight. Now, strong winds, I mentioned 60, 65 miles per hour the closer to the coast that you go. Travel issues for sure. Widespread power outages. You already heard Maggie talk about that. And on top of that, we've got the heavy rain. So if you're driving on the roadways, not only are we going to be watching for flooding thanks to the significant rapid snow melt that we'll feel through the day today, but also we'll have those winds that don't make it a whole lot better. And it makes it even worse if you're driving in snow falling, especially with those low visibilities expected across portions of the Midwest. It looks like places like Chicago, Milwaukee could pick up a good significant amount of snow between now and tomorrow. We're going to watch for really probably a difficult commute when it comes to Chicago as we get into the afternoon hours. And if you haven't had enough yet, we're going to watch for our next major storm system, guys. This takes almost a very similar path as the one that we're dealing with now, and it brings a lot of those same impacts to the same regions. Saturated grounds, likely flooding, snow, all of it's going to be on the table with this next storm system rolling into the weekend.
All right. Angie, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, this morning we're learning more about that explosion at a hotel in downtown Fort Worth, Texas, which left more than 20 people injured.
Yeah, take a look at the video. You can see the aftermath of that blast that blew out at least 2 floors and sent debris raining down onto the street below. The cause of the explosion is under investigation, but authorities say it was likely a natural gas leak.
For more, we're joined by NBC News correspondent Guad Venegas in Fort Worth. Hey, Guad, good morning. What is the latest on the ground?
Joe, Savannah, good morning. Search crews were working overnight. We just saw that view from up top of what you see behind me. This is what's left. There's still some debris left in the street. So search and rescue crews were still going through the building earlier this morning, making sure that no one was left inside. We know that yesterday, some people were stuck inside for hours before crews could finally get to them. There were some individuals that were inside that building. The debris had blocked all the exits, so they had to wait for some of those crews to come in. So again, overnight, those rescue crews making their way through the building. We know that the investigators are here. The ATF has joined the FBI, and they still have to determine 100% what caused this. They believe this was some type of gas explosion, but again, they have told us that they will continue that investigation until they can make that 100% determination.
Well, looking at the video, just incredible that no one was killed in the blast. Still, though, nearly 24 people were hurt. What do we know about them? How are they doing?
So we know in total 21 people were injured by this explosion. 14 of them had to be taken to a hospital, at least one with critical injuries, 4 others in serious condition. We know that some of the people that were injured worked at a restaurant inside of the hotel. That restaurant shared a statement with the local Dallas-Fort Worth affiliate indicating that the restaurant was luckily closed when this happened. However, the 3 employees who were inside were injured. They're all being treated at the hospital. Others were people that were in the area. We also saw video that was shared by some of the witnesses of people running outside with their face covered in dust, some still bleeding as the search and rescue crews came to their aid. Fortunately, as of now, we just have those 21 injured and no deaths as a result of this blast. Joe, Savannah.
Really a miracle. All right, Guad, thank you very much.
There is growing controversy this morning surrounding Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin. After revelations, the Pentagon waited several days to tell President Biden and to tell the public about his hospitalization. Lawmakers from both parties are now demanding answers, with some Republicans calling on Austin to resign. NBC News Chief White House correspondent Peter Alexander has more on this. Peter, good morning.
Hey, Joe, good morning. Nice to see you. A top Republican says that this whole episode represents a shocking breakdown in the chain of command. This morning, the Pentagon spokesperson says that its general counsel is reviewing whether Austin broke any laws. His mystery absence coming at a critical time with rising tensions in the Middle East, including more than a dozen attacks on bases housing U.S. troops in that region during his hospitalization. This morning, questions are growing about Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin's health after revelations that Austin was hospitalized in the intensive care unit for days without telling the president, key staff members, or the public. Still, White House officials say President Biden has no plans to fire Austin.
Are you still confident in Secretary Austin, sir?
The president ignored shouted questions about Austin Monday, but his administration is now facing bipartisan outrage.
It would appear that Lloyd Austin is the person who needs to resign, or his chief of staff, or both of them.
Former President Trump arguing Austin should be fired for improper professional conduct and dereliction of duty. Democrats are also demanding answers. Armed Services Committee Chairman Jack Reed writing, "This lack of disclosure must never happen again."
I do hope that there is a review to ensure that there wasn't any jeopardizing of national security.
Austin, a 4-star general, sits atop the chain of command between the president and the U.S. military, required at all times to respond to a national security emergency. He pledged transparency during his Senate confirmation hearing 2 years ago.
We will be transparent with you.
Pentagon officials say Austin was initially in the ICU and now remains at Walter Reed, but citing privacy concerns, they will not elaborate on the medical issue he's facing. The Pentagon says Austin, who was conscious but in severe pain, was rushed to the hospital by ambulance on New Year's Day, citing complications from a recent medical procedure. The next day, the Pentagon transferred certain responsibilities to his deputy, who was vacationing in Puerto Rico, without telling her why until January 4th. The same day, senior officials at the White House and the president were finally informed. A Pentagon spokesman says Austin has no plans to resign after he initially accepted responsibility in a statement, writing that he recognizes he could have done a better job ensuring the public was appropriately informed. Also overnight, we learned that the Marine Corps' top general had successful open heart surgery on Monday after a nearly fatal heart attack last fall. The Marine Corps immediately announcing that in a statement, which, of course, Joe, comes in stark contrast to how Defense Secretary Austin and his aides handled his health episode over the past week. Joe.
All right, Peter, thank you so much.
Well, there are several major developments this morning involving the investigation into that Alaska Airlines plane that had its door plug blown out mid-flight. As Alaska and United Airlines wait to begin FAA-ordered inspections of their 737 MAX 9 planes, both airlines now say their technicians have discovered loose bolts, including some involving that very same door plug that blew out of the Alaska Airlines flight. NBC's aviation correspondent Tom Costello has the latest. Hey, Tom, what do we know?
Yeah, United and Alaska are the only U.S. airlines flying the MAX 9, and they're under an FAA order to inspect every single one for any sign of trouble with the door plug, like the one that exploded on Friday night. Investigators have now recovered that door plug. Meantime, with the MAX 9 grounded, United and Alaska are again canceling hundreds of flights today.
Developing overnight, growing safety concerns as the investigation into that Alaska Airlines flight deepens after the door plug exploded off the plane mid-flight Friday night. The head of the NTSB now says the bolts that were supposed to keep the panel and plug in place are missing.
We don't know if they were there or if, again, they came out during the violent, explosive decompression event.
Alaska Airlines also said late Monday preliminary inspections by its technicians of its MAX 9 fleet indicate some loose hardware was visible on some aircraft. Just hours after United said its technicians had discovered loose bolts around the installed door plugs on its MAX 9s. Neither airline has started the formal FAA-mandated inspection process. But that door plug is what gave way in Alaska's terrifying decompression explosion Friday night.
Alaska, or Seattle, Alaska, 1282, we just depressed, we're declaring emergency.
Forcing the crew to make an emergency landing back in Portland, while seat cushions, headrests, and cell phones were all sucked out of the plane. On Monday, the NTSB recovered the door plug in Portland, where it landed, in the backyard of Bob Sauer, a high school physics teacher.
When I went to investigate it, it was very obviously part of a plane.
Now, with loose bolts turning up in early inspections, the question, could more planes be at risk?
Does that suggest this could be a wider problem?
That's too soon to tell. We are very focused on what we are investigating with respect to this aircraft.
The NTSB says on 3 previous flights, pressurization warning lights lit up in the same cockpit. Yet Alaska only restricted that plane from flying over water to Hawaii until technicians could evaluate the problem. It's not clear if they were related to the explosion. In a statement, Boeing has apologized to airlines and passengers, saying, "We are committed to ensuring every Boeing airplane meets design specifications and the highest safety and quality standards."
A little bit more on those pressurization warning lights. There are 3 warning lights. The first one tripped, suggesting there might be a pressurization problem. When the captain then checked the backup systems, they were clear, showing no problem. That's why the plane was allowed to keep flying. They thought maybe they had a bad sensor, although the plane was not allowed to fly over water to Hawaii.
Welcome back. Late night talk show host Jimmy Kimmel delivered a scathing monologue about New York Jets quarterback Aaron Rodgers. It's the latest twist in their ongoing feud. In the monologue last night, Kimmel challenged Rodgers to apologize after Rodgers made comments suggesting a link between Kimmel and the late convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. NBC News entertainment correspondent Chloe Malas has the latest on this. Chloe, good morning.
Good morning. Jimmy Kimmel did not mince words in that nearly 7-minute monologue, and now he's calling on the NFL star to apologize.
Aaron Rodgers is too arrogant to know how ignorant he is.
Overnight, Jimmy Kimmel hitting back at New York Jets quarterback Aaron Rodgers in a scathing 7-minute monologue.
He genuinely thinks that because God gave him the ability to throw a ball, he's smarter than everyone else.
Kimmel again taking on the star quarterback after Rodgers last week suggested a link between Kimmel and convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein while appearing on ESPN's Pat McAfee show.
A lot of people, including Jimmy Kimmel, are really hoping that doesn't
Rodgers was referring to court documents that included names of people with some alleged connection to Epstein. Kimmel's name not among them when they were later unsealed. McAfee later apologizing, describing Rodgers' comments as trash talk. Kimmel, who had threatened Rodgers with legal action at the time, doubling down overnight.
I don't know Jeffrey Epstein. I've never met Jeffrey Epstein. When you hear a guy who won a Super Bowl and did all the State Farm commercials say something like this, a lot of people believe it.
Over the past few years, the late-night comedian has made the NFL star a punchline on his show, particularly over his stance on vaccinations.
We shouldn't know, because nothing says I heal myself with crystals like this haircut. I mean...
Kimmel now speculating Rodgers is taking revenge.
He just said it because he's mad at me for making fun of his top knot and his lies about being vaccinated.
But saying he went too far.
And as far as the, well, you say things about people all the time argument goes, yes, I do. It's not the same. It's not even close to the same. We say a lot of things on this show. We don't make up lies.
While taking some shots of his own.
Aaron got 2 A's on his report card. They were both in the word Aaron, okay?
But Kimmel says he's still hoping Rodgers will apologize.
I bet he won't. If he does, you know what I'll do? I'll accept his apology and move on.
Okay, so could that apology happen in just a few hours? Here's the thing. Yesterday, Aaron Rodgers said that basically he was going to address everything and address this controversy during Pat McAfee's show. Now, he goes on every single week on this show, and it's on ESPN. It's on this afternoon. But will he apologize? Will he make another jab? So we will have all of that later today.
All right, we'll keep an eye on it, Chloe. Thank you.
Let's get you more international headlines now. We're going to start with the latest on U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken's visit to Israel.
NBC's Megan Fitzgerald joins us from London with that and other world news. Megan, good morning.
Guys, good morning to you. That's right. We start in the Middle East, where U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken landed in Israel late last night, where today he held high-profile meetings, meeting with Israel's president, prime minister, and war cabinet. Now, the secretary was in these closed-door meetings, is expected to brief Israeli officials on his 2-day talks with Arab leaders on ending the war and preventing it from becoming a regional conflict. And in Taiwan, the defense ministry issued an alert warning that China had launched a satellite telling people to be cautious ahead of the upcoming elections. The island is set to hold presidential and parliamentary elections this weekend. China has described the elections as a choice between war and peace. China sees Taiwan as a renegade province that it wants under its control. And bullfighting is making its return to Mexico's capital with mixed emotions. Fans are excited, as animal rights groups are not. The tradition was banned by a judge in the city in 2022, but the country's Supreme Court of Justice has overturned the ban, which means bullfighting will return to Mexico City in what is being called the largest bullfighting arena in the world. Guys.
All right, Megan Fitzgerald, thank you.
We have a disappointing update on that historic launch of the first U.S. lunar lander in more than 50 years. It appears the lander will most likely not be able to make it to the moon's surface. The lander, developed by a Pittsburgh-based company called Astrobotic Technology, well, it ran into some problems shortly after its launch from Cape Canaveral yesterday morning. The launch of the rocket, which was carrying the lander into space, well, that launch went off without a hitch, but Astrobotic says a failure in the lander's propulsion system means it won't make it to the moon. Astrobotic says it is trying to still get as much data as possible from the mission.
We're taking a closer look now at a trend taking over tween and teen TikTok pages. Kids under 13 are flocking to beauty stores to get their hands on high-end skincare products But some experts say these expensive and extensive routines could be doing them more harm than good. NBC News correspondent Emily Aketa joins us now for more on this growing trend. Hey, Emily, good morning.
Good morning to you. You know, you think illuminating serums, under eye gels, facial mist. These are all words apparently in teenagers' vocabularies as this obsession with skincare is skyrocketing among young people. Some people, though, are wondering whether this growth in the market could be cause for concern. Take a look.
So I'm going to start off by using the daily face cleanser.
This holiday season, pricey skincare products topped many wish lists. But it's not just adults that were hoping to find them in their stockings, but increasingly young people, too.
There's obviously face wash, and then there's moisturizers, and then there's like kind of like a redness reducer kind of thing.
12-year-old Julia Panuto is part of the beauty industry's newest consumer group, Generation Alpha, children born in 2010 and beyond. And these skincare kids are obsessed.
Whose skincare routine is more expensive?
Oh, my daughter's, yes.
Many of the teenagers drawing inspiration from Get Ready With Me videos on social media, showing off lengthy and expensive routines.
Let's do my 10-step skincare routine.
This video of Kim Kardashian's 10-year-old daughter, North, racking up millions of views.
Gen Alpha was literally born with a smartphone in their hand. And so the access to watching influencers on platforms like TikTok and YouTube, where they're seeing these influencers.
Annual skincare sales exploded from $7.8 to $9.2 billion over the last few years. But some adult shoppers are not pleased by overcrowded stores.
Why are we letting our kids walk around like they're 30 years old?
And the employee's literally like, it's actually retinol. Like, you actually don't need that.
Ulta Beauty telling NBC News in a statement it does not proactively promote skincare to Gen Alpha, adding, as guests are shopping for younger skin types, education around ingredients and products focused on specific skincare needs is more important than ever. Many dermatologists applaud a good skincare routine at any age, but say young people should stick to the basics like cleansers and sunscreen to avoid irritating their skin. Laura Panuto says she reads the skincare labels for her daughter closely.
I think if she can learn to take care of it in a good, healthy way, then I'm okay with it.
So consumers of all ages have leaned into skincare more, something some researchers say have happened really since the pandemic, when people started wearing a bit less makeup, when they were working from home, and they leaned more into self-care. Some estimates suggest that the global skincare market could reach $167 billion by 2030. Joe and Savannah.
My goodness. Emily Aketa, thank you so much. Well, dermatologist Dr. Marnie Nussbaum is here with us for more on what parents should know, especially if their teen and tween girls want to head to Sephora, want to head to Ulta, be buying all of this stuff. I got to say, they have way more steps in their skincare routine than I do, somebody who really does have skin concerns as someone in their 30s.
Yes.
What is, I think they're seeing these TikTok videos of these girls who look gorgeous and that whole kind of like glowing, kind of shiny skin
luminous skin.
Right. And of course, then it can kind of backfire. What are you seeing when it backfires?
So we're seeing every day mothers bringing in daughters that are having allergic reactions, acne, all of these acids that they're using, alpha hydroxy acid, glycolic acid, things that are not meant for their skin, retinol, break down the skin barrier and cause inflammation, redness, dryness, and allergic reactions. So it really is making a problem where there was none. A good, simple routine is okay at this age, but it has to be simple. A mild cleanser, an oil-free moisturizer, and sun protection.
What are you hearing from these young girls who are inspired in a lot of cases by something they see on social media, and then they end up with acne they never had?
They're really frustrated because not only has it affected their wallet, but it's affected their psyche. They've made a problem where there wasn't. They also really want to use these products because they see the Get Ready With Me videos, and it's a real issue. Like, you have to teach your child what's healthy skin habits and when is the appropriate age to use these products.
Do you think for a parent to kind of understand, like, why does my child want this on kind of, like you said, on a psyche level? Is it almost more like the activity of doing it?
It's the activity. It's getting, like, almost getting advice from, like, a big sister when you're doing it with them, and it's like a skincare trend that they're doing with their friends. My 8-year-old only wants, like, face masks and these, luminizing drops like their friends have, and I basically am the mean old lady that says boring is
fast. Less is more. and so I'm always saying, less is more, ladies, okay?
Oh, my goodness.
And it's hard because they really want to engage in this activity, but we just need to steer them to the right products with the right ingredients.
It's just wild how things evolve. Like, I remember when I was young, 8 years old and wanting a face mask.
It would be...
I wouldn't even have thought of skincare. You know, it was
No.
makeup, and the only thing I could get was clear mascara.
I always tell them there's going to be a time when we're going to have to put you on a regimen. Enjoy when you don't need it.
Absolutely. And when it's your money and you're having to buy all that stuff, you don't want to.
But gone are the days for wish lists with toys and dolls. It is Sephora gift cards and Ulta gift cards.
It's just wild.
So we really need to teach them, protect them, and choose the right products with them.
What specific ingredients or products,
Sure.
like maybe if you don't know all the ingredients, like a vitamin C serum or something like that, is a red flag?
So a red flag would be a retinol, an exfoliator, anything with hydroxy acids, alpha hydroxy acids, that is not needed for the tween generation. You want to look for things that say hypoallergenic, non-comedogenic, that means won't clog pores, good for sensitive skin, anything with hydrating ingredients, but a lot of vitamin C's are in oils that will make them break out. Also, they're using too many products too fast that they don't know which product or ingredient is making them break out.
Issue, right.
So really, it's less is more, and boring is best.
At what age should a child even be washing their face?
So it's okay for them to start washing their face around 9 years old, but really with a mild soap-free cleanser. Nothing with salicylic acid, nothing that's strong, and show them just a mild, 30 seconds, rinse with your fingertips and pat dry is fine. Sun protection's the biggest thing you can teach your kids to help invest in their skin in the long term. And that's what we really need to get the message out.
So that's okay with even children, young kids, you're good
After
with them
6 months
putting
of
a
age,
sunscreen on?
Sunscreen, mineral-based zinc or titanium.
And is that same with moisturizer?
So moisturizer, make sure it's oil-free, non-comedogenic, and hypoallergenic.
All right, there you
Yes.
go. Dr. Marnie Nussbaum, this is really fascinating that it's happening at this
fascinating,
age.
and I think it's going to keep getting more fascinating.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for
Thank
joining
you.
us. We are back with a look at all things tech as the 2024 Consumer Electronics Show gets underway today in Las Vegas. Over the next few days, big-name companies from across the world will be dropping their newest and most innovative products, with many of them expected to tap into the AI revolution. And that's not all. According to the president of the Consumer Technology Association, this year's CES will, quote, spotlight the critical role that technology is playing to improve every aspect of the human experience. That is a tall promise. Joining us now for more on this is CES spokesperson Allison Freed. Allison, thank you very much for joining us, and congratulations on the kickoff today. Tell us some of the major themes here. Last hour, we were talking with one of our colleagues, Steve Patterson, who's on the ground there, and he said it's almost like AI is so big it's not a theme, it's just like everywhere, and then there's these other new themes that kind of permeate through that. What are some of the big things we should watch out for?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we are thrilled to be back in Las Vegas. The show floor opens this morning, and the energy is absolutely palpable. We've got more than 2.5 million net square feet of exhibit space and 4,000 exhibitors here showcasing the latest and greatest in technology. We are expecting AI, like you said, to be a massive, major, pervasive theme. I'm saying about 90% of the companies that are here this week will be talking about AI in some way, shape, or form. But I would say if we look at the overarching theme of the show, it's how is technology being used to better everyday lives? And that's critically important, and we're going to see that play out today through Friday.
Yeah, so what does that look like? I just mentioned that kind of a focus here is improving the human experience and this focus on tech for good. What does that mean, and what can you see on the showroom floor there that does that?
Yeah, so we're actually partnering with the United Nations Trust Fund for Human Security, and in the fall we announced technology as the 8th pillar of human security. And when we look at kind of human rights, it's access to food, access to water, access to clean air. Well, now access to technology has been deemed a basic human right, and it's how can companies use technology to better everyday experiences. We've got an area in the show floor, Eureka Park, full of startups, 1,400 startups there. And there's a Ukraine pavilion. So it's all kinds of companies coming with innovation from Ukraine. There's a company over there that's using leaves to help make paper because there's paper shortages and paper factories aren't there. And so how are leaves being used to make paper? I saw solar panels coming through completely transparent. So think about windows and skyscrapers in the future, that the windows of those buildings are being used to produce energy. We're seeing a lot in the way of hydrogen energy, plants being bioengineered to clean the air both indoor and outdoor. Think about the use cases in places like Shanghai or Delhi where the air quality is not so great outside or inside. So it's things like that where technology is really on the forefront of helping us live better, safer, cleaner lives day in and day out.
Yeah, it seems like sustainability then is kind of taking a front row seat there.
Absolutely, absolutely. We're seeing a lot in the way of hydrogen energy when we look at sustainability. Honda just announced a new line of electric vehicles. Electric vehicles are massive. Speaking of vehicles, I'm actually in West Hall, which is fully dedicated to mobility. So we've got 250 companies just in this hall alone showing electric vehicles, autonomous driving. There's going to be a race out at the Las Vegas Motor Speedway where completely autonomous race cars will be going head-to-head competition, and they are programmed by university teams from 15 countries around the world. And the whole idea there is to test the use case of autonomous technology at super high speeds. These cars go upwards of 190 miles per hour. And then how does that technology and those learnings trickle down to the cars that you and I will be driving autonomously on the roads, you know, safely at 70, 60, 50 miles per hour.
Absolutely. Allison, for some of our viewers, maybe they've been there or they've seen coverage of this over the many years that CES has been taking place. Is anything really new or different this year about how it's going down?
I mean, we're just excited to be back in person and having that energy and having our numbers back up. That's a big new area for us. But we've got things like beauty technology this year. L'Oreal is keynoting, and beauty tech accessibility is a big story coming out of there. The Goodyear blimp is going to be here, so we're really excited about that. You know, just every company is a tech company, a lot in the way of agricultural technology here. So every company is a tech company, innovation everywhere, AI everywhere, and just the fact that the numbers are back, 130,000 people coming into Las Vegas this week to do business, and that is just, you know, something that we can't replace, that human connection.
Absolutely. Awesome. Allison Freed, best of luck with the show this week. Thank you very much for joining us to give us a preview.
Thank you so much. Have a good one.
You too. Well, let's get you some financial headlines now. It looks like Delta will be expanding its fleet in the coming years. CNBC's Silvana Hanal joins us again with that and other financial headlines. Hey, Silvana.
Hey, Savannah. Good morning. Yeah, so Delta Airlines is reportedly close to a deal with Airbus for an order of dozens of wide-body jets. Now, the deal could be announced as soon as Friday when Delta reports earnings. And while Delta placed an order for 100 Boeing 737 MAX 10 jets in 2022, it's primarily been an Airbus customer. The twin-aisle planes are expected to help Delta grow its network in Asia, which has lagged behind the U.S. and Europe in travel after the pandemic. Yellow school buses are going green with a $1 billion investment from the White House. The Biden administration announcing funding for school districts to replace diesel buses with cleaner models, including electric. The money coming from President Biden's infrastructure law, which authorized $5 billion for cleaner buses. The EPA will award grants to more than 280 school districts to buy more than 2,700 greener buses. And nearly 20% of all office space is vacant. Data from Moody's Analytics shows 19.6% of offices in major U.S. cities weren't leased as of the fourth quarter. That's the highest number since at least 1979. Now, the new record, it shows how remote work has upended the market, but it also reflects years of overbuilding as cheap lending rates fueled a construction boom. The South is the hardest hit area. Houston, Dallas, and Austin, those have the highest office vacancy rates in the country, Savannah.
All right, Silvana, thank you very much.
You got it.
Well, our own Danny Ceballos is positively thrilled with our next story. Last night, the Michigan Wolverines became national football champions. They beat the Washington Huskies 34-13 in front of a Houston crowd. But it was a controversial road to that undefeated title. Coach Jim Harbaugh was suspended late in the season after facing allegations of sign stealing. The win, though, marks Michigan's first football title since 1997. It also marks the last time only 4 teams appear in the playoffs before next year's change when 12 teams will fight for the national championship. Welcome back. The new Mean Girls movie had its premiere last night. Now, this is a film version of the Broadway musical of the 2004 movie. Lindsay Lohan, who of course starred in the original, made an appearance posing with creator Tina Fey. Renee Rapp, who plays Regina George in this new version, paid tribute to the original's iconic spring fling dress, wearing a pink corset over her tuxedo dress. Now, if you're a regular viewer, you know we honor the movie's Pink Wednesdays tradition right here on Morning News Now. As long as I remember it's Wednesday, I'm usually wearing pink. Joe also jumps in on it. You can catch the premiere of the new Mean Girls this Friday. You can sit with us, by the way, always, viewers at home. And Joe, I really do appreciate how much you've committed to Pink Wednesday as well.
Done my best. And over the weekend, we actually watched the original Mean Girls.
Oh, good.
For the new one. So,
as a little primer. Awesome.
Exactly.
I love that.
Excited for that. All right, finally this hour, when it comes to phones, we often like to talk about the newest technology, with many consumers upgrading to the latest model every 2 or 3 years. Well, I have a confession, something you might have seen before in this show. This is my personal phone. It is an iPhone 7 Plus, which was released in 2016. Yeah, I get teased a fair amount, but even though I'm on the extreme end of things, research suggests I'm certainly not alone. Those famously long lines that stretch outside of Apple stores when a new iPhone model is released? Well, to some, standing here is about as desirable as a mosquito bite. On the flip side, you've got the flip phone.
Yep, it's flip phone.
What does your flip phone do?
It texts, not easily, voice calls. It has a camera. The camera's terrible.
Still, John Tomlinson is perfectly happy with his 2017 flip phone because he just doesn't want to be connected all the time.
You know, you see people walking around with smartphones and they're looking at their smartphones. I know if I had a smartphone, I'd be staring at it all the time. And I don't think that's good.
John's not alone. A 2023 report found 31% of us own a phone that's at least 3 years old. A year earlier, that number was 20%.
That's it. That's my lovely old brick of a phone.
Peter Barry still has an iPhone 4S, a model that was released in 2011. It still works?
Still works perfectly well. Yeah, I get most things that I need on it.
Though he doesn't have the latest apps like YouTube and can't scan QR codes or pay for stuff with his phone, but that's okay.
If it still works, then why do I need to buy a new one?
Like Peter, many folks are holding on to their devices longer, in part because new phones are pricey. Plus, these days, phones last longer, retain their resale value, and the upgrades from generation to generation may not feel that dramatic. There's something else going on, an aversion to too much communication, which is why Nia Kufis switched to a flip phone.
I just noticed that I was getting really addicted to checking apps like Instagram mostly.
Do you have any desire to go back to a smarter phone?
No, I don't think I ever will. My mind just feels a lot clearer and I just feel more present.
She doesn't have a map app, so on longer trips, she'll use an old school atlas. And instead of snapping pics with her phone's low quality camera, she hooked this mini cam to her wallet.
Yeah, it's really tiny, but it does the job.
Such simplicity is important to Peter Barry. He plans to use his iPhone 4S for as long as he can, years if it lasts.
Then I shall progress to the iPhone 5.
Where are you going to find an iPhone 5?
I've got one in the drawer at home, already awaiting.
Redefining what it means to upgrade.
Maybe we spend too much time on our phones, so maybe taking a step back is not such a bad idea after all.
So whatever your reason for holding on to your phone longer, we've got a few tips to make sure it lasts. Don't skip those updates. Delete apps you're not using. Get a good case in case you do drop it. Keep the screen clean and all those ports. And remember, sometimes you can replace the battery instead of the entire phone. Peter Barry has already done that with his iPhone 4S, which is still working. And the cool part about this is, I still have the button.
I was going to say, if you need just a refresh of just how old it is, he has the button.
The button, which when you were wearing masks during the pandemic was quite convenient to not have to worry about Face ID.
I mean, it's like more high tech than the new ones.
Exactly. It's like,
I love how
we've
spun this for you.
Exactly. I'm not
Really
alone.
cool
I'm sure we'll hear from many of you who are just like me. All right, that's going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
But stay with us. The news continues right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.